Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today, we're going to be talking about the top 50 NBA players under 25 years old heading into the 2021 season. Now, full disclosure, this article I wrote was published on June 25th. By the way, you can find the link in the description if you want to read it for yourself. It was published on June 25th. And I'm not about to go back and Google all 50 of these names to find out if they're actually still under 25. I know for a fact Ben Simmons is over 25 now, by I think 20 days or so. So not all these guys are going to be under 25 at this point, but I think it still holds. I mean, they're all going to be at most 30 days over 25. So this is going to be my top 50 players who are maybe under 25 and a month old. So we're going to go into here starting right off. 50, Rui Hachimura. He's a good player. He can score. He can be a solid contributor for them. My concern with Hachimura right now is that he doesn't shoot the three very well. He's not a high-impact player on defense. So he has some concerns there. He's going to be a guy who I think in the future can score 1,000 points in the season. But I don't know if his role will ever get to that point. I don't know if he'll ever develop into a guy who's efficient enough that you want to run an offense through him, especially when you have options like Bradley Beal on the team. And, of course, Hachimura has a negative VORP over the past 2 years as well, in the first 2 years of his career. That's why he's down this far. Marvin Bagley is at 49. Now, Marvin Bagley hasn't done a ton during his career. Seems like he's done Sacramento, certainly. And seems like a bust so far, but we know guys can come back and kind of have the second half of their careers after the first couple of seasons where they develop and have great careers. Bagley has all the potential in the world to be a starting player on an NBA team. For whatever reason, hasn't worked out for him. There's been injuries. There's been limited playing time in Sacramento. We'll see if he can pull it together, but for right now, he's kind of hanging on here barely by a thread at the back end of the top 50. Saddiq Bey. Now, the Pistons have a lot to be happy about right now. They've got Cade Cunningham. They've got so many guys that Killian Hayes, I believe is how you say his last name. They've got so many guys on the team right now who are young. After moving on from Blake Griffin last year, which really cleared up a lot of room for them to just have young players on their team or developing guys. Grant's on the team as well. Detroit has to feel very good about where they are as a team in terms of their development, in terms of their rebuilding process, because you have a star like Cade Cunningham, you've got Grant, and now you've got a hope for the future, and guys like Saddiq Bey can develop and become key players in your long-term rebuild. Jonathan Isaac is at 47. Isaac is a very good rim protector, very good defensively. We saw him start to develop on offense a little bit. Unfortunately, during the bubble, I forget it was an ACL tear. I forget what exactly the injury was. I know it was a knee issue. We'll see if he's back in time for the start of this coming season. He missed all last year. He's still only 23 years old, hanging on 24. And certainly a young player with a lot of high upside. So I think they're hoping that he can rebound well and get back to where he was before and continue growing. But right now I'm having a little bit lower than I would have ordinarily because he missed the entire season due to injuries. And his teammates at 46, Wendell Carter Jr., very well-rounded player, both on offense and defense. Does a little bit of everything. I don't think he shoots threes very well, but he does a little bit of everything else at a significant level. A guy I think could start on teams but could end up as a rotational player as well because of that lack of outside shooting currently. He's not a super tall center. He's only listed at 6'10". He does have the muscle mass and the weight to bully guys down low, but he has not been super efficient on the boards. He doesn't grab a high percentage of rebounds right now, especially on offense. So you're concerned a little bit about that. Right around 10-point or 11-point per game scorer for his career so far. I think he can certainly get better than that, especially if he learns to shoot the three ball out better efficiency and a higher percentage. But for now, he kind of gets stuck down here because, again, well-rounded player, but the ceiling seems to be fairly low for him at this point compared to some other guys on this list. Mitchell Robinson at 52. Robinson missed a good chunk of last year, so we have another guy who's dealing with injuries. I just think that his role is more defined than someone like Wendell Carter Jr. Maybe Wendell Carter Jr. is the better player, but Mitchell Robinson has a more defined role in the New York Knicks right now, and that's why I have him a little bit higher. He's a very efficient scorer because he doesn't shoot threes at all. He's a good rim protector. He got the good size you'd like to have him. He's a 7-footer. So I have him a little bit higher than someone like a Wendell Carter. P.J. Washington for Charlotte. Charlotte, another team that seems to be set up very well for how they can do moving forward with LaMelo Ball on that team, all the young pieces they've added right now. They got to feel very good about their team. But P.J. Washington is one of the better players from that group. He's a viable three-point shooter at 6'7". So you see like the progression he's making. But I don't necessarily know if he took a big enough jump between year one and year two to go much higher than 44, which is why he's down this low. However, the third season we've seen in the past can be huge for guys like Jason Tatum, Maybe it'll be huge for PJ Washington. Immanuel Quickley with the New York Knicks, one of the best players on this team this past year that finally got back to the playoffs. I scored the third most points on the Knicks and finished second on the team in points per 36 minutes with 21.2. He's a good three-point shooter. So you have to love what he's got so far. Very early on in his career. Quickley is a guy you need to keep an eye on from the New York Knicks. They have a bunch of older players on the roster. They're bringing back most of the same squad from this past season. I think Quickley will play a big role. I'm a little concerned about how many minutes he'll get with guys like Derrick Rose and Kemba Walker coming in. But I don't think the Knicks can abandon a guy like Quickley because of how good he was already. And Tyler Herro, dropping from 23 last year all the way down to 42 this year because he did not have a good second season. Now, was it as bad as some people think it was? No, I don't think it was as bad as some people were framing it was. But it wasn't good either. You know, he's not a good defensive player right now. And having that slump shooting-wise, not being able to step up for Miami is a big reason why the Heat got eliminated so early in the playoffs this year and why they struggled all season. Kind of hit a wall right now. Again, that third season is huge for guys. We'll see if Herro can pull it out and have a great third year. I think he can. I still believe in Tyler Herro, but we'll see if it happens or not this coming season. Because he's going to have a lot of chances with a very good Miami Heat team around him. Darius Garland, he's 21 on this article, might be 22 already, but I'm not entirely sure. Like I said, I didn't go back and check every age. Now it's just 2 months later. But Garland had a bit of a rough rookie season. He kind of came back as a very positive player this year. His field goal percentage, three-point percentage skyrocketed, and he was so much better offensively to the point where the Cleveland Cavaliers were tossed around the idea of trading Colin Sexton this offseason because they believed Darius Garland would be so much better for that team going forward. I think he has the offensive ability to rank inside maybe the top 30 on this list. It's just a question of his defense, which holds him back, keeps him outside the top 40. Two kind of similar players, in my opinion, at 40 and 39, Dante DiVincenzo and Kevin Huerter. These guys are both good three-point shooters. They're good coming off the bench. They can start sometimes, but I don't know if they're pure stars at this point. DiVincenzo is obviously coming off an injury, while Kevin Huerter is coming off a pretty solid performance in the playoffs, especially that one day where he dropped 27 against Philadelphia. Everyone seems to remember that. These guys do not have the same potential or ceiling as guys like Herro or Garland, but right now they're just solid contributors with more experience, and we see that play out, especially in the playoffs, especially late in the season. So I have these guys a little bit higher ranked than Garland and Herro right now. Gary Trent Jr. at 38. Gary Trent Jr. is just a very good scorer. I don't know if he has the ceiling of some of the guys I've talked about already. Like I think he might be capped out a little bit more than some of the people I've mentioned. But in 2020, Trent buried 38.5% of 7.4 three-pointers per game. That's huge in the modern NBA. And I believe he actually got a contract extension or a new contract from Toronto. I think. I'm not sure. But Gary Trent Jr. is one of the better scorers from the outside in the NBA right now. At least does that at a high rate. And Toronto's lucky to have someone like that on the roster because they're going to need that if they continue to rebuild the way they are. I love Brandon Clarke. I really wanted to have him so much higher than 37. I really wanted to have this guy top 30. I just could not find someone to move out of the way for him because he's a bit undersized. He doesn't shoot the three ball very well. But he's made a positive impact since day one. I think his rookie season was actually more impactful than this past season in terms of what he does statistically. But still, we know Brandon Clarke and John Morant coming in with that crew at the same time. These guys are going to be pillars of the Memphis Grizzlies for a long time. I know Clarke had some regression this past year, but I am very, very confident that he will step it up next year and work even better than he did in his rookie season. Miles Bridges has been a bit of a slow development project coming out of Michigan State, but success seems to be finally translating for him. He's a 40% three-point shooter this past year. He's got all those highlight reels out there because of him dunking. I think he'll pair very well with LaMelo Ball as well because of that athleticism he has, his ability to shoot from the outside. Paired with LaMelo Ball will give Charlotte a bright future. You also, of course, have PJ Washington, their draft picks in this year. There's a lot to love about what Charlotte has done this offseason. They're going to be a very good team for years to come. Maybe even this season. I don't know. Robert Williams at 35 might surprise some people. The reason I have him this high is because his defensive performance. Not his offensive performance. He's only a 6'8 center, not a big guy. But he is defensively very good. He averaged about 3 blocks per 36 minutes this past season. And he only played about 18.9 minutes per game. And if he had played closer to 25 minutes per game, I think there's a realistic chance we would have had him probably closer to the top 25 instead of at 35. 34, a little bit of reach. Probably people are going to be a little bit confused by this one. Lauri Markkanen. I really like Markkanen still. I know he's not going to live up to the potential that maybe we had thought he had going to the draft. maybe that Chicago thought he had. I don't even know if he's going to be on the Bulls much longer. He's a restricted free agent right now. But I think you saw him maybe starting to find his fit in the league the past year or so. He's still a really good three-point shooter. He still has size. He's not going to be a tremendous defensive player. He's not going to be the rim protector as someone like Kristaps Porzingis is. I still think there's a home for Lauri Markkanen in the NBA. There has to be. There's no way there isn't. Because his size and his ability to shoot threes from the outside, I think there's going to be a role for him to find. I think he'll fit very well on a team as long as they're willing to take the risk on him and willing to be patient with him. Another Chicago Bull, Coby White at 33, scored over 1,000 points this past year, showed a little bit more facilitation skills as well. I just don't think he separates himself from the pack really for me. There's nothing Coby White does to me that is extremely special. I understand you watch him live. There are some great plays he makes. I get that. He has some very good nights where he scores a ton of points. But I just don't think that statistically, or even watching him play, that he is going to separate himself from the pack of guys that he's kind of trapped in right now. He is closer to being in the top 30, which is props to him. But right now, I'm still sitting and waiting on Coby White to kind of wow me to the point over like a prolonged stretch of games, over like maybe a 30-game stretch. I'm waiting for that kind of breakout from Coby White, and we just have not gotten that yet. But he did have 17 games with 20 or more points this past season. Again, I'm just not fully buying into him quite yet. Tyrese Haliburton, a rookie this past year. Sacramento Kings have had so many options, so many chances to build a good team with young players, and they've screwed it up countless times. They seem to have hit an actual gem here in Tyrese Haliburton, though, based on what he did this past season. He almost cracked the top 30. I was very close to having him in. He nailed 40.9% of his three-point attempts this season, over 5 assists per game. They have 3 players on this list, but couldn't get one above. Well, they had 3 players on this list. They couldn't get above 31 wins. That's what I'm saying. The Kings have had so many chances. They've had so many good players, so many young pieces, so many draft picks, and they're still, I just don't know. Is it the coaching? Is it the organization? Is it the ownership? You got to start looking at the Kings because they have so many issues right now. They're underperforming. Critical development stage, Malik Beasley starts us off. Beasley, just a very good scorer. There's really no other way to put it. 39.9% of his threes went in this past year. Taking 8.7% per game. That's crazy. His defense is a mess, like I said in the article. But he's so close to that 20-point-per-game range that it's very hard to keep him lower. I know he's got off-the-court issues as well. He's a very confusing player to rank. I could see him being ranking in the 40s, honestly. I could see him ranking in the low 20s, just based on what he can do on the court. But again, a very odd player to rank for me. I have him at 31. Perhaps I should have him a little bit lower, but right now I'm sticking with 31. Matisse Thybulle at 30. I want to put him so much higher as well. This is another guy I want to put higher, but he's just a defensive player right now. He's one of the 5 best defensive players in the NBA, but he's just a defensive player. He doesn't have anything offensively that will make me say, wow, this guy is an NBA player. If he was not for his extremely good defensive capabilities, Matisse Thybulle would probably be in the G League. He does nothing for you offensively that stands out whatsoever. He's just so good on defense that you cannot possibly have this guy in the top 30 for a list like this. He's so good there, which is why I have him this high. I love Matisse Thybulle. Hopefully he continues to develop an offensive game because he even becomes an average offensive player. He's going to be a guy who will be not only give you all defensive selections every year, he might even make an all-star game just being an average offensive player based on how good he is defensively. Another solid defensive player at 29, DeAndre Hunter. Atlanta obviously missed him for a couple of games in the playoffs this past year. He's averaging about 15 points per game so far in his career. There's some issues with the scoring still. I'm not sold on his ability to create his own shot necessarily. There's a bunch of offensive things I think he needs to really work on. But solid defensively, has more potential offensively right now than Matisse Thybulle has shown to this point, so he's going to get in 29. Speaking of offensive potential, Jalen Brunson has been a gem for Dallas. He's one of the best, if not the best, backup point guard in the NBA currently. He was a second-round pick. He's covering out 25 minutes per game for himself, and he's being phenomenal out there. They love to have that guy in Dallas right now, and having a point guard combination like him and Luka is just tremendous for any kind of organization. He's made over 40% of his threes this past year. He can play defense. He plays hard. He hustles. He can facilitate. And he could start playing on a couple teams in the NBA right now, but instead he's going to be one of the best backups in the league playing on Dallas. OG Anunoby, who was thrown Anunoby, and I'm going to go with Anunoby. I've heard announcers say the name before. I just constantly forget it. I constantly have trouble with the names. You know me. But OG was thrown around in conversations with maybe trading for Ben Simmons this year for Toronto. Did not get traded. And I understand why, because he's been so good. He's already a really good defensive player. But he's getting up there offensively as well. 15.9 points per game this past season while making almost 40% of his threes. That's a huge jump for him compared to where he was as a rookie. And you have to love what he's done so far. He's a great defensive player. And now he's building that offense. One of the best developmental stories in the NBA currently. Number 26, Anthony Edwards. Rookie, high scoring, low efficiency. That's why he's down 26. I could have him even lower, honestly, because he was not an efficient scorer this past year. He had a pair of 42-point nights. He had some very high scoring games. But again, not an efficient scorer. Playing a bad team where you can just shoot however many shots you want because you have Karl-Anthony Towns. You got some injured players on the team as well. But again, there's no standard there in Minnesota. There's no winning standard. You're developing guys. So you can take as long as you want. You can have Anthony Edwards shoot the lights out, but miss 60% of his shots, miss even more than that some nights. And no one will bat an eye because it's Minnesota. But again, the efficiency was not good for Anthony Edwards this past year, but we saw the flashes of the scoring potential and the highlight reel player he can be. Might be the last guy I'm going to talk about this video. I'm going to split up in two videos actually because I know I've been talking for a little while now. I don't want the file to get too big. 25, RJ Barrett. I really do trust RJ Barrett. I still trust him quite a bit. Obviously, he's never going to reach the level someone like Zion Williamson has already reached. I don't think he's going to get that level. Zion Williamson is just so good. RJ Barrett's a solid player, but he's not going to be that guy. I would have liked to have seen RJ Barrett step up a little bit more late in the year this past year for the Knicks. Maybe a little bit more in the postseason. He didn't necessarily have the best games at times in the playoffs. But I think he needs to become more involved as a playmaker, more active on defense because he has the size to do it. But I just think he's underachieving so far. And again, it takes time. We have to be patient with these guys because of all the COVID stuff, everything that's happened. Their early careers have been so messed up. But I think RJ Barrett is one of the guys that has the potential to become a very good player, maybe even a franchise player down the line. He's not that guy right now. I think it's going to take 2 or 3 more years before we see that from him. But he has the potential, in my opinion, to get to that point. And guys, thank you so much for watching this first part of the video. I'll have the second part up shortly. I guarantee it, hopefully. But anyways, go follow me on Twitter at @Sam_Teats33. Please subscribe to the channel if you can tolerate me talking for this long. I would really appreciate it. Subscribing is free. You can always unsubscribe later. So please, get the other videos on this channel, look out. And I hope to see you all later.